Welcome back to Dungeons & Dragons Homebrew Builds, the series where I'll be constructing classes, weapons, races, and more based on characters and items from your favorite anime, comics, TV shows, and video games. With Part 3 of Bleach coming in 3 months and Part 4 likely to drop next year, I'd like to bring my year and change-long Bleach coverage to a close with one last batch of Bleach Brave Soul subclasses for Shigekuni Genryusai Yamamoto, again, Chojuro Tadaoki Sasakibe, Izuru Kira, Isshin Shiba, Masaki Kurosaki, Ryukin Ishida, Ichigo Kurosaki, and Rukia Kuchiki.
Yeah, 覚悟はいいか。行くぜ!
So everything remains the same for the base class features, and fun fact, I actually playtested this homebrew again for the first time in several years and had a blast. I specifically used the Toshiro subclass of the Eyes Wide Open variant and played through a White Plume Mountain one-shot at 8th level, and it was really fun. As of writing, we haven't yet finished the run, but Shikai Bankai lasting 20 minutes is probably the most clutch thing about the class yet, followed closely by Light as a Feather because of certain traps. In any case, let's get to our first pre-subclass changes for our first new class variant, Soul Reaper, Heart and Fire. Since, as of writing, the Heart and Fire banner characters haven't received a resurrection, all 3 subclasses get one soul trait feature. Yamamoto's subclass Soul Reapers will get a 1-round cooldown reduction for their special Zanpakuto weapon attacks, something I'm also currently enjoying as a Toshiro Soul Reaper in my current game. Chojuro Soul Reapers get this trait as well, and Izuru Soul Reapers actually get a 20% reduction to all damage received. The largest damage reduction we've seen so far, I do believe. Beyond that, everyone gets 2 flash steps per bonus action, and we're off to subclasses. So of course you guys actually got a Bankai Yama Soul Reaper subclass not too long ago, but being that his Bankai gives him a different power for each of the 4 cardinal directions, and the first one was only 2 different directions, now we get the other 2, west and north. For just choosing this subclass, you get some innate skills, but one is kinda niche. The first one is that any creature that isn't an undead, fiend, or humanoid that tries to dodge your attacks, so that takes the dodge action or uses evasion or anything like that, will instead automatically either just get hit or take full damage rather than half or no damage in the case of evasion or evasion-like abilities. Undeads, fiends, and especially humanoids are incredibly common enemy types and it doesn't work on them. The dodge action rarely gets used by enemies in my experience, but the anti-evasion thing may be useful fairly often. In any case, the other 2 benefits are much more useful. Complete immunity to fire damage and Zanka no Tachi Nishi Zanjitsu Gokui, the big old cloak of heat Yama gets from Zanka. It's basically just a constant chance to burn any enemy within 30 feet of you, regardless as to whether you hit them or can deal damage or anything else, which is pretty damn nice. You don't even need to see them, it's just a constant aura effect around you, so good luck to any hostile creatures trying to sneak up behind you or be invisible near you. Your Shikai Bankai is of course Zanka no Tachi, and with it you get a chance to burn your targets with every attack if they fail a con save equal to your Reishi save DC found in the Blood Warfare archetype feature, and you get a 50-foot dash that doesn't provoke an attack of opportunity, does 3d6 fire damage, and can burn, a second 50-foot dash that's a little wider to catch more hostile creatures not directly in front of you, and an attack version of Zanka no Tachi Nishi Zanjitsu Gokui that has a big 200-foot AoE and does 4d6 fire damage. Chojuro subclass Soul Reapers don't get any inherent skills, but their chance to inflict paralysis with his lightning instead of just a bit of burn damage can be significantly more useful more often than not. Ganryomaru gives you a big wave of lightning bolts for the first Zanpakuto attack, but sacrifices some damage for a bigger area of effect. It gives you a lightning burst at a point you can see within 30 feet of you, both of those dealing 3d6 lightning damage, and it gives you the ability to summon a big thunderstorm to deal 46 lightning damage to a 200-foot AoE around you. Nothing too special about the attacks, though it's worth noting that, despite being a melee-based subclass, and yes, all of these attacks are classified as melee weapon attacks, since Chojuros don't get a dash, it's a very stagnant subclass without special mobility options. Great range on his melee attacks, but at the cost of pretty much just standing in one spot, so be sure to utilize your flash steps properly for maximum use of his range. Finally, we have Izuru Soul Reapers, who actually inflict the weakened condition with all of their attacks, or rather have a chance to, which makes it so that, for the duration, affected targets can only deal a maximum of 1 damage with their attacks. in this particular instance being because Wabisuke doubles the weight of anything it hits, which would make it difficult to move around and attack properly. This is a fantastic condition to have because it effectively makes the enemy's damage output nil, making the jobs of tanks and healers both much easier and increasing overall survivability. To add to that, Izuru Soul Reapers are ranged attackers that have a normal attack that can fire blades of spiritual pressure from up to 30 feet away, and whose special attacks almost exclusively do force damage, one of the least resisted damage types in 5e. The subclasses' special attacks are quite solid as well, with a 40-foot long, 10-foot wide wave of spiritual energy blades that deal 3d6 force damage for better damage than his normal attacks and have a better AoE, a 30-foot around black hole that you can drop anywhere you can see within 30 feet of you that can suck hostile creatures in, deal force damage, and, when you follow up by using Hado number 58 Tenron as part of the same action, people caught in the black hole auto-fail the save. Granted, the black hole is only there for that duration of the attack, so Tenron dispels it, and Tenron itself only does bludgeoning damage, but the attack still does 2d6 force damage and then 2d6 bludgeoning damage, which is magical bludgeoning damage even before 11th level where you get the Reaper of Souls feature, which makes attacks from your Zanpakuto count as magical for overcoming resistances and immunities because Tenron is a Hado, which are treated as spells for this class, like how Shunsui's special attack 2 in the Eyes Wide Open variant of the Soul Reaper class just lets him cast Zangarin, so it's unlikely that the bludgeoning damage will be resisted, and the attack has a maximum of like 24 damage plus your bonuses. Finally, your last special Zanpakuto weapon attack is a simple 200-foot AoE around you that does slashing damage, with this slashing damage actually being affected by whether or not you have Reaper of Souls yet, as the attack is done with the actual blade of Wabisuke, so if you haven't gotten Reaper of Souls yet, this will be non-magical slashing damage. You get your first skill at 9th level for every subclass, but to keep things succinct, I'll just go to 14th level with the ultimate Zanpakuto weapon attack for each subclass and then tackle the skills in a speedrun-like fashion. Old Man Yama's get, of course, their North power, since we've seen a lot of his West power, but not the other up to this point. Simply put, it deals 5d10 fire damage to all hostile creatures within 400 feet of you, and burns them all for 2 rounds, no save. Good attack if a bit basic, and that common fire damage resistance might hamper your damage output, but the skills I'm about to cover should help to offset that. Next up, Chojuro and his Bankai. Bankai! This ultimate attack is actually a bit special as, while it too does 5d10 of its damage type, lightning damage, over a 400-foot AoE around you, it also summons the Golden Lightning Palace as a dome centered on you that follows you around. Any hostile creatures within 150 feet of you when you use your ultimate attack are stuck in there for the 5-round duration and constantly take 2d6 lightning damage. That's a max roll of 110 lightning damage, along with a guaranteed 2-round paralysis, and a chance to paralyze several times around with that effect, and with special Zanpakuto weapon attacks, especially since, while you have to consider each move's cooldown, you have 4 attacks per round from extra attack. Finally, for Heart and Fire, Izuru's This New Hole Aches, pause, just does a 5d10 non-magical bludgeoning damage 400-foot AoE attack that guarantees 2 rounds of weakness, not loving the non-magical damage, but weaken is a good condition so it's fine. Now for the skills. Lightning Round. At 9th level, everyone gets Berserker, boosting their special Zanpakuto weapon attack damage. Yama's and Chojuro's get 20%. Izuru's by an impressive 40%. Everyone gets Bruiser at 15th level for more normal Zanpakuto weapon attack damage. 20% for Yama's and Chojuro again, and 30% for Izuru, so he seems to be taking the lead for damage. 17th level gives Yama a 20% damage boost against burned enemies, which is a nice little on-brand damage boost. Chojuro gets the same thing but for paralyzed creatures, like Master like Student. And Izuru gets Debilitator so that his weakened condition lasts around longer than they normally would. More of one of the best things about him is always a good thing. And just in case you wanted that for Chojuro and Yama, that's a bit greedy, but they do both get it at 18th level, along with Devastation to boost ultimate Zanpakuto weapon attack damage by 40%, though Izuru only got one skill where the other two got two. Specifically, he gets Flurry so that his normal Zanpakuto weapon attacks gain an additional damage die. And lastly, Yama and Choji both get Frenzy and Havoc, both now dealing double damage with their special Zanpakuto weapon attacks to catch up to Izuru's many damage boosts, as well as expanding their special Zanpakuto weapon attack range by 20%. And Izuru, ever the survivor, gets last-ditch survival for a full resurrection when killed once per long rest, and Poise for immunity to stun and prone, as well as being forcibly moved. All in all, I think Izuru stands out as being ranged and having weaken, Yama's the best DPS I think, and Chojuro's ultimate is ridiculously good. Now, technically the next set of characters is two separate classes, the Tomorrow variant of the Soul Reaper class and the Tomorrow variant of the Sternritter class, but since they're practically the same class, I'll be grouping them together myself for viewing convenience. So, starting at the beginning, Soul Traits. Simply put, Ishin gets special attack cooldown reduction by 1 round, Masaki gets a normal attack boost by 20%, and Ryukin gets a special attack cooldown reduction by a round as well. So 2 special attackers and 1 normal attacker it would seem. Everyone gets 2 flash steps and Hirin Kyaku, so let's just move on to the Shikai, Bankai, Seirin, and ultimate attacks. Alright, for the Soul Reaper class, we have Ishin Shiba, and for the Sternritter class, we have Masaki and Ryukin, obviously. Before we dive right in, Ishin and Masaki both get innate special skills. Ishin gets that auto-hit thing that Yama had, but for specifically fiends, so super niche, but he also gains immunity to the poisoned condition, which is nice. Masaki's abilities are a little more generally useful, gaining immunity to any kind of freeze-type condition, so less common, but not like attack bonus against one creature type specifically doing one thing specifically. So for the Shikai Bankai, Ishin's get and Getsu, where you gain a chance to burn people with your attacks. You gain a big ol' 120-foot long, 30-foot wide fiery dash and slash that of course doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity and deals 3d6 fire damage, a 40-foot AoE fire blast at a point within 10 feet of you that deals 3d6 fire damage, and a big 240-foot AoE fire explosion that deals 4d6 fire damage. Very standard kit, fire damage, and our only melee character in this batch. For Masaki's, you get the Kurosaki lineage, where you can now summon your own personal Heilig Bogen to fire Heilig File at a creature within 30 feet for 2d6 piercing damage. For your special attacks, first one is a 50-foot wide wave of Heilig File that fires out 10 feet and deals 3d6 piercing damage, so definitely prioritizing coverage over distance. Your second attack is your only melee attack that deals 3d6 bludgeoning damage. You're activating Blood Vein to damage any hostile creature within 10 feet of you, but for the next 3 rounds, you and your party gain a +7 bonus to your attack rolls and armor class, as well as a crit range of 13 to 20, and everyone gets shields to reduce any incoming damage to 0, your allies getting 1 and you getting 3, though the skill has a 7-round cooldown. Finally, your third attack is a volley of Heilig File over 200 feet around you that deal 46 piercing damage. Also, it's worth noting that all of these attacks except the second one are subject to God's Chosen at 11th level, so these attacks are non-magical until 11th level. For Ryukin Ishida, he gets the last Quincy. He also gets a Heilig Bogen and Heilig File attack, but his range is 150 feet. His first special attack creates 2 50-foot long, 20-foot wide rectangles of Reishi from Ginto, so a 50x50 spell-like attack that does 3d6 radiant damage. His second special attack is an AoE of your firing Heilig File around you, which helps if you're surrounded at close range. And the last special attack is you're using Springer to create a 240-foot AoE that deals 4d6 radiant damage. A bonus for Ryukin is that only his second special attack is affected by God's Chosen in terms of his special attacks. His first and third special attacks are basically spells. For the ultimate attack for Ishin, what else but the iconic signature of the Kurosaki men, Getsuge Tensho. It's a little generic in effect, just a 400-foot AoE of 5d10 fire damage and a 2-round guaranteed burn, but I'll be damned if it doesn't have some major star power. Misaki has Doing What I Can, which is literally just a 400-foot AoE of 5d10 piercing damage, and it hurts that it would also technically be affected by God's Chosen, though it doesn't matter as much since you get your ultimate attack at 14th level and you get God's Chosen at 11th level, and she also doesn't inflict any conditions with any of her attacks, but it doesn't really matter since normal attacking is her meat and potatoes. Ryukin isn't so lucky though, as Arrow of the Future is pretty much the same except he's a special attacker, so let's hope he gets some damage boosts from his skills. Ishin gets a really niche first skill, where if anyone else in your party is playing as specifically a Captain Soul Reaper with Dex as their highest ability score, they gain a 20% special attack boost, so at least it works for you, but also potentially for anyone playing Shunsui and Ichibei and I think that's it so far. Rukia ain't a captain, Yoruichi ain't a captain anymore. Yeah, I think that's it. Misaki and Ryukin are much simpler, just getting Berserker, a 50% and 60% damage boost respectively, both being actually really good. Next at 15th level, Ishin finally gets his 20% Berserker, not bad. Misaki gets a 60% Bruiser for exceptional normal attack damage, and Ryukin gets a 40% Bruiser, which is still really good. Ishin is lagging a bit with his 20% Bruiser at 17th level, so not really pumping out those wild damage numbers so far. Misaki gets an awesome Enhancer at 17th level, which makes it so that the boost from her special attack 2 lasts 2 rounds longer, and Ryukin gets just what he needs for his lackluster ultimate, a 60% Devastation boost. At 18th level, we begin to bring our Tomorrow classes to a close, with Ishin getting Debilitator so his burns last longer, and Devastation so that his admittedly basic Getsuga hits 40% harder, Misaki getting Flurry to give her normal attacks an additional damage die, and Guard Break to bypass most AC bonuses, and Ryukin, while only getting one skill here, gets Frenzy to double his special attack damage, which is fantastic for him. Last but not least, for our weird one banner, two classes situation here, Ishin gets Frenzy for doubled special attack damage and Havoc for a 20% boost to special attack range. Misaki gets Hit Hidden Enemies to bypass benefits given to hidden, obscured, or invisible enemies and bypass cover, as well as Poise to make her an unstoppable damage machine with high AC, damage-negging shields, and Poise. And Ryukin gets a 20% Havoc as well, and Nullify Ranged Resistance, which allows your attacks to ignore any trait, feature, or ability that allows a creature to resist ranged attacks. Last but certainly not least for this Homebrew builds video and our Bleach coverage for the time being, the Inheritance Soul Reaper class, featuring 2 subclasses, one for Ichigo 10 years after the events of the Thousand Year Blood War, and one for Rukia 10 years later as well. To get the precursory information out of the way, both get a 1-round cooldown reduction for their special attacks for their soul trait, Rukia can flash step twice per bonus action, and Ichigo can actually flash step 3 times per bonus action. Should you choose the Ichigo subclass, you are guaranteed to hit your target if it is an undead who attempts to dodge your attack, same rules apply as the other traits of its kind I've gone over so far, and you gain immunity to anything that reduces your damage as well as the paralyzed condition. For Rukia, you gain immunity to freezing conditions and anything that would reduce your damage output, and you gain a special new ability where, in the 2 rounds after you use your special transformation that you get in your Shikai Bankai feature, the DC to save against conditions you inflict is doubled. Ichigo is all about raw power as opposed to Rukia's being more about freezing, but both are exceptionally strong and the coup de grace to our coverage. Ichigo gets Zangetsu, which gives him a special attack that allows him to fire off a massive wave of Reiatsu, a 120-foot long, 35-foot wide slash of spiritual energy that deals 36 bludgeoning damage, a boost attack for his second special attack where he unleashes his full latent power, dealing 3d6 slashing damage in a 40-foot AoE at a point you choose within 10 feet of you, which grants you and your party a +7 to attack rolls and AC, as well as a 13 to 20 crit range, though it has a 7-round cooldown, and finally a single slash that deals 4d6 slashing damage over 240 feet. Typical stuff with an amazing boost that really makes this character. Rukia, for her Shikai Bankai feature, gets Sode no Shirayuki, which grants all of your attacks a chance to freeze their targets, but also gives you a special Bankai transformation into Haka no Togami which lasts for 3 rounds, must recharge for 8 rounds, and changes all of your special attacks and gives them an additional die of damage. This feature also, of course, comes with the typical 3 special attacks. One a 20-foot thrust spinning slash that deals 3d6 cold damage, and becomes a dash and slash that deals 4d6 cold damage in Haka. The next being a slash that causes an explosive temperature drop in a 40-foot area centered on a point you see within 10 feet of you that deals 3d6 cold damage, and becomes you blowing cold air in that same area for 46 cold damage in Haka no Togami. And last, a full power slash from Sode no Shirayuki, or a spinning slash from Haka no Togami that deal 4 and 5d6 cold damage to a 240-foot AoE centered on you, respectively. Now then, their ultimate attacks. For Ichigo, no better way to close Bleach coverage than with Getsuga Tensho.
よう覚悟はいいか
行くぜ血液転生
It's a 400-foot AoE 5d10 slashing damage attack, but like the true Bankai version we did a while ago, this attack is so powerful it has a small chance to instantly kill the targets if they fail a Constitution saving throw. For Rukia's Haka no Togami,
挽回八下の咎めこれでとどめだ
it's 5d10 cold damage, same range, and a guaranteed 2-round freeze. So not any insta-kill, but it's a guaranteed 2-round freeze. So, with the ultimate attacks covered, let's wrap up with skills. At 9th level, they both get a 60% Berserker, great damage for special attacks to add to their recharge reduction. At 15th level, Ichigo gets Bombardment to double the damage of his Getsuga, where Rukia gets a 20% Bruiser for more normal attack damage. 17th level gets the Ichigo subclass's own Bruiser at 40%, as well as a 16% reduction to damage taken. Rukia's get a 20% damage boost to frozen enemies and Debilitator to make her freezes last longer. Ichigo gets Enhancer at 18th level for his buff to last longer, as well as Frenzy for doubled special attack damage. Rukia gets Devastation for a 40% damage buff on her Haka no Togami ultimate attack, as well as also getting Frenzy for doubled special attack damage. And finally, 20th level. For our capstone, both subclasses get a 20% special attack range boost from Havoc, as well as Ichigo getting Marauder, a skill that allows his melee attacks to ignore any trait, feature, or ability that allows a creature to resist or defend against melee attacks or damage, so like Guard Break but much better. And Rukia gets Recover, where finishing a short rest allows her to regain 20% of her maximum hit points in addition to whatever she'd gained from the short rest. Alright folks, thank you all so much for watching. I'll be sure to put these classes in the Google Doc and link it below, and moving forward, I'll be trying to find a way to get a PDF or text file down there as well, in case you want to just read it and don't want to have to sift through the XML mumbo-jumbo for the class information. Be sure to like and subscribe, and also remember to vote, as now that Bleach coverage is done for the foreseeable future, I'll be returning to voting polls so that you all decide what homebrew builds I'm gonna make next. Alright, I've been the Exterminating YouTuber, and this has been Dungeons & Dragons Homebrew Builds. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.